I'm Dr. Altheresa Good Howard. You know, with all of the recent protests and outbursts, rioting, concerns, frustrations, anger, all of the things that we have been seeing going on all around us, even on top of the virus and all of the things that we see, there have been some questions that have come before me, and I wanted to actually respond, especially to the questions and those that are wondering, asking about why the protesting, why all of these people going out there protesting and seeing all of the marches and all of those things. So I wanted to try in some way to be able to share some insight, some light, some experience, some information, and possibly even some advice in regards to it, to be able to help in some way bring some answers, or even help to bring people to the table, to do more talk, to do more discussions. And our desire is to be able, in our own way, to be able to help with bringing about the positive change that is needful for our environment and for our country in particular. You know, right now, I'm holding my little prince, my youngest and newest grandson. And I have a 6-year-old, almost 7-year-old grandson. Also have some older grandsons. That I have a teenage one, 19, and others. And I have some sons. And I even have some what we call son-in-laws that I call sons in love. And I have a husband. And then I have nephews and other young males that are African American. And I even have some family members of other ethnicities as well. But in particular, when we're looking at the protests and we're wondering and we're questioning and we're asking, is it all needful? Is it necessary? You know, why? And there are a lot of things that people who don't have the experiences that some of us have had, who have not come from the background, who haven't seen, experienced, or known of these types of issues and things that are being protested about, many of them are asking and wondering, or even questioning whether or not it's important, whether or not it makes any sense. And many are outraged at the fact that some are protesting. And even though I may not do what may be done, I may not have been one, or you may not be one that may necessarily go out and protest for any reasons. There are many, for many reasons, who have protest, who do protest, and it is a right that we have in the country that we live in. I've seen many people in many backgrounds and in many socioeconomic income brackets, and many people with many issues and concerns that they have out there protesting. All the time we see it. We see people who protest for life, and people who protest for choice, and people who protest for gun control, and people who protest for the right to bear arms. And we see all kinds of protest, from those that may be Republican and those that may be Democratic, from those who may be of one religion and another religion, or all kinds of issues and things. And so it is a right in our country for people to be able to protest. But in particular, why I want to address why we see what we're seeing amongst the people right now, and that have been going on all around us for many, many years, and why we may even see some in years to come, depending upon the things that happen, depending upon how the laws are changed, or how our country is dealing with some of the systemic racism or the injustices that are taking place. All of those things will determine whether or not we continue to see these types of outbursts. But I want to share some light on, for those who really desire to understand, those who really desire to want to seek solutions. And those who in different backgrounds, whether it's our Caucasian brothers and sisters or those of other ethnicities who really have been questioning and really want to understand. If you do, then some of the things that we're seeing happen to be because as I'm looking at my grandson here, my newest grandson, and I'm going to give him to his mom now and finish this so he can take his nap and be able to rest and continue to grow. As I share this information, I'll be right back. Thank you for waiting on me. I handed off my grandson to his mom. But I now want to talk about and address some of the core of my concern and things on my heart, as well as some things that have been coming to me that I want to address and respond to. And I pray that in some way that I'm able to be able to help, maybe help give some clarity on some things, maybe help be able to bring some understanding on all sides, and maybe to be able to help in helping to move things forward or giving some advice or some insight to be able to help us move forward, but be able to come into a place where we can find answers and we can experience the necessary change that is needed for our culture and for our country and for our world at this particular time. I was asked some questions and hear some questions among people that are wondering why the protesting, why are we seeing the outbursts, the outrage, why are we seeing so much of response and reaction to recent injustices that we have seen and experienced from Georgia to Minnesota to Mississippi, and all areas, all states of the United States have experienced some different types of injustices, but similar in that they have involved African American males primarily. There have been some females, but primarily have been among African American males that have been treated unjustly. And primarily we're dealing with the police brutality that we've seen, but we've also experienced racism in many forms. We've experienced racism in the outward, as far as you'll see people that will release or throw out racist language, slangs, messages in many ways, or sometimes you can see in institutions or in businesses or in corporations or different things, a different type of racism or bias, but primarily more than bias, but having to do more racially. And so there is a building up amongst, and I can say this, not all of the issues that we see are racist. I do want to say that, because I hear many times Caucasians saying not everything is racist or racism or behind it or fueling it. And so we do understand that not everything is a racist issue. Not every situation have to do with the racist things, but we have so much in so many cases that is what is being reacted to, because there have been so much and so many. And I'm thankful for those of the Caucasian background or Caucasian brothers and sisters who are actually wanting to understand. I'm thankful that you're wanting to sit down and hear, wanting to understand better, wanting to understand it in a way that you can help be able to know how you're to do things. If there's something different that you can do, if there's some way that you can help. And I know in particular many are wanting to understand so that you won't feel that you're being threatened because of the outbursts, and especially when you hear people talking about this has been 400 years of racism and injustices and different things. I know I've had many Caucasian friends or co-workers or people that I've been in connection with that have said, we're not racist. And so it can sometimes make them feel that when African Americans in particular get outraged, and even Hispanics, because there's many times the black and the brown of our culture that are many times treated unjustly in proportion to our other ethnicities. And so I'm glad that you're wanting to hear and understand, but sometimes feeling that you're being singled out or threatened when African Americans in particular are talking about some of these things and talking about slavery and talking about the racism and talking about the injustices. And sometimes it can make you feel alienated, feel threatened, feel as though you're being wrongly looked at and wrongly judged because of the color of your skin, as well as we are being wrongly judged many times for the color of our skin. So understanding that is not the intent. I want to say to you, if you're a Caucasian, some of our brothers and sisters, that is not the intent. Now, there are some people, because of so much built-up anger, are spewing out their hate as well upon you because of the color of your skin, just like we have many of the Caucasian background that and ethnicity that is spewing out their hate among and on African Americans and Hispanics, and it has been from the Jewish race and the Indian race. And so there have been many times we've seen this because of our ethnicity. But we can come to a place that if we can understand better from our brother's perspective or our sister's perspective, even though they may be of a different ethnicity than us, then I believe that somehow we can better begin to not only work together, live together, and we can better be able to help our country be able to be more in a unity and a unified way. Because if I can understand that you are like me, you just may have different culture, you just may have different color or ethnicity or background or experiences, but we are still humans. And in particular, those of us in America, we are Americans. And so we all have the same desire. We desire to see our family and our children be able to grow up in a world where they will be treated fairly, regardless to the situation or what's going on, that they will be able to go to school, that they can get their education, and they can then go on, and whether they go get a job or they start a business or they are in corporate world or whatever areas and things that they would desire to do. We would desire this for our children. We would desire to see them be able to live a good and healthy and fulfilled life and be an instrument of help in our communities and be an asset to our families and our communities and our churches and our whole country. We would desire to see them live and be the best that they can be, and then be an asset to help our country be the best that it can be. We all desire these things for our children, regardless to our ethnicity or our backgrounds. I would hope that we all desire to see the best for our children, for our families, for our loved ones. And so if we can get past differences and not hate one another because of our differences, but be able to see that though we may be different, we all are valuable. Every life, every person, regardless to our ethnicity or our backgrounds, we're all valuable. And so many times African Americans, we have not felt that. We have not seen that. We have not experienced that in a larger way, in the totality of a lot. Many of us, and I would say even for myself, many of us have experienced injustices. Many of us, including myself, have experienced racism and racist types of things said or done or undermined because of racist things. So this is a bigger and larger thing than what we can realize. And because of in the African American community, they realize it, they have experienced it, they feel it, they see it, or a loved one have experienced it. It has come to the place to, after seeing the police officer recently, that or the former police officers who have just ran down a young fella, young African American male that was jogging in the neighborhood and just on camera killed him in front of us, and seeing the young man, African American, who we have been able to see clips and things that saw that he was arrested because of the suspicion and thought of that he may have committed some type of fraud or some type of act, of a criminal act, but yet we see him not resisting arrest in any way and in any form. Not resisting. He's going peaceably, doing what the officer said to do, being handcuffed. And after being handcuffed, thrown on the ground, and the police officer with his knee on his neck to the place that he literally caused him to lose his life. And the other police officers there who stood by and did nothing. And many other things. We saw the young lady, Caucasian lady that was in New York, who felt threatened for whatever reason it was. And sometimes the threat is just because of the size of an African American male, or because of how they may look or seem, and many times though because of what the perception is by that one who is looking upon them. And this lady, for whatever reason, felt threatened by a non-threatening looking African American male who was just bird watching in the park in New York, and felt threatened for whatever reason. A very successful man, a businessman, who he wasn't looking in any way threatened. He didn't have on the hoodie and his head covered, didn't have a lot of tattoos, didn't have, whatever the look is sometimes that can be threatening to people. He was there, but she felt threatened and began to call 911 and began to say on 911 that she felt threatened, that there was this young African American male there that she felt threatened by, and she was calling and knowing that if they had come, if something had not been done, it may have even been for the video, that this young man could have found himself in a position where his life would have been threatened because of this phone call, when she was not being threatened at all. And many times these things begin to bring up among African Americans the history, and begin to remind us of things that have happened in the past when these things have taken place. We understand that during many lifetimes, from slavery all the way up until now, there have been many times where there have been African American males in particular whose life has been taken, who have been lynched, who have been killed, who have been taken out and done harm to because of someone, primarily if it was a female and a Caucasian female, that said that this young African American or this black man threatened them in some way, and they were taken and treated in such a way to many times being killed. And so these things will bring up horrible thoughts to us. It's not a thought of well, that was something that happened in the past, why y'all still holding on to it now? No, these are things that have happened in the past but continue to happen in different ways. And so we're wanting you to understand that if you are of especially a Caucasian, that it's not to be a threat to you, it's not to be anything that black people are hating you or wanting to now rise up against you, but it's to say that there is so much that has been done unjustly that they're just tired of it continuing to go on, and nothing stopping it, no one stopping it, to see With the Floyd case, other police officers standing there, in many other cases, police officers standing there who are supposed to protect all of us, but standing there and seeing that their fellow officer may be crossing the line and doing something, instead of stopping them, that they just stand by. And so it's an outrage that we see that's taking place with the protests. People are outraged. And I will say not only African Americans are outraged, but many Caucasians are outraged, Hispanics outraged, all ethnicities and backgrounds outraged. And it should be. It should be. And the reason why I wanted to share some of this is because there are so many who don't still understand it, but there are some who don't understand who want to understand. And so we want to try to help you understand so that you will see and maybe even see and understand better and help us bring about the change that is needful and necessary. Maybe help bring about the change. We know that those of us that are of the faith, those of us that are believers in Jesus Christ, those of us that are Christians, we know and understand that we are to treat all men and all women, all people fairly. We understand that we're supposed to do unto others as they do unto us, that we're supposed to love and not hate, that we're supposed to, even if it's someone that hates us, that we're supposed to pray for them and do good to them. And even those that misuse us and abuse us, and we're not to have hate and be like Jesus, who was looking out among those who were of the Roman culture and who was of the Roman background, and even those who were of the Jewish background, who were a part of those who caused him to go and be crucified and lose his life. But Jesus on the cross, he began to say, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. We understand that as Christians, many times that is what we're supposed to do. We understand that many times that is what has been done. And we still are supposed to love and not hate. And we still are supposed to pray for them and not go out and try to do the same and do unjustly, even if someone else has. We're still supposed to do these things. But there is also a time that you do have to speak up, and you do have to speak out, and you do have to take a stand for what is right, and operate in the judicial area to try to help change the things that are happening, to try to change the laws and to change the policies. And in many times, the reason why we're seeing the protests is because they're saying, we have been patient, we have been waiting, we have been hoping, we have been talking in some aspects, and things are still taking place, and injustices are still happening, and then sometimes it's looking like it's getting worse and worse and worse. And so therefore, they're feeling like we've got to do more than just talk. We've got to do more than just wait. We've got to do more than just sit idly by. We could see in our country, if it wasn't for the things that took place, even during the 60s, the 50s and 60s, that things may not have been able to change as they have changed. And we have experienced a lot of change. We have experienced a lot of progress. We really have. There has been more and better racial relations, but there is still more that is needful. There's still more that we need the churches to rise up and to stand up and to be able to help with. There is still more that we see, not only the African American churches and the Hispanic churches and the Jewish faith and all the backgrounds, but we need the Caucasian churches as well, or people, brothers and sisters in the Caucasian background and ethnicity in the church to also stand up with us and to help bring about the change. The reason why we see some of the changes happening, well, we see those that go out and protest about the right to life. We see those protesting about the pro-choice. We see these things happening, and we understand that there are times when we need to have these things happening. There are times when we have to get out there before more people, to get more people to come together to help bring about the changes that we need in the judicial system and in the policies and things. And so we're needing now us to come together to be able to help bring about change and bring justice and change in policies when it comes to the brutalities that sometimes we're seeing, the extensiveness that we're seeing, the excessiveness that we're seeing, the disproportion that we're seeing, the changes in even whether they're on jobs or other areas and things that we see, systemic racisms and different things. We need all of us, and we need the understanding to be there on both sides. I always look to understand it from a position of someone else in a different ethnicity than me, to understand their beliefs, their experiences, their background. So the more we can understand one another, the more we can see one another as humans, the more we can see one another as brothers and sisters, the more we can see one another as valuable people, the more we can work together and accomplish greater. We need as well. And I believe that is what people are asking for. But they're tired of waiting. And so they're going out and rioting. Not rioting, they're going out and protesting, but I want to speak to the rioting. I do want to speak to the rioting. There are some that are out there rioting. And I do not condone that. And I want to ask you, if you see this, if you hear this, if you're among that, please, if you go to protest, please do not go out rioting. Please do not go out looting. Please do not go out burning property and damaging property and destroying property. Because most of the time I'm seeing it, and you're destroying your own neighborhood. You're destroying our neighborhoods. You're destroying the economy in our neighborhoods. And so that is not helping. That is hurting the issue. It is hurting the what is trying to be done to bring about change. Every time the focus is taken off of the lives that have been lost and the injustices that have been taking place, it is taking the focus away from those things, and it will hinder us from being able to progress. It will hinder us from being able to get the answers that we need, the justice that we need. It will hinder us many times from being able to progress in the way that we really want to see progression take place. So I ask you, no looting, no rioting, no destroying properties. If you desire to protest, if you must, then try to do it nonviolently. Try to do it in a way that you can make your voice heard. You can make your presence known, but not alienate and not hinder the causes that need to be addressed.